Let's take a look at some information and charts on Wi-Fi for Brave New Coin. So Yearn, the service, I enjoy thoroughly. I participate in. Wi-Fi, the coin, is a bit of a mystery to me. Of all the governance tokens that exist, Wi-Fi may be the most problematic because it's valued at 30-something thousand per coin. Yeah, you can buy a fraction of a Wi-Fi, I get it. But it all got a bit silly over the past few months. So first of all, Wi-Fi, what is it? It is a lending aggregation, yield generation, and insurance on Ethereum blockchain. I don't think anybody uses, well, I don't want to say anybody. I don't know of anybody that uses the insurance aspect. Most people, I think, involved with Yearn use lending and yield through vaults, through Yearn. There is a governance piece to this with the token, but in general, most people could care less about governance as long as number go up for the token, right? So lending aggregation and yield generation is an important service when there are multiple different platforms that you can lend or borrow, Comp, Maker, Aave, BlockFi, all sorts of exchanges, right? Ideally, Yearn as a service is plugged into all this stuff, figures it out automatically, algorithmically, and like it says, it shifts funds between various different places automatically. And if we look at the yields, over time, since year to date, right, these have come down on USDC, they've come down on DAI, they're kind of all over the place for ETH, and basically flat for BTC. And in general, if you see token borrow rates increasing, that typically indicates short interest. Whereas if you see stablecoin borrow rates increasing, that typically indicates speculation, long interest, that sort of thing. To see stablecoin rates declining could also be a factor of stablecoin prints, specifically USDC. USDC has been printing like mad, even beyond what Tether has printed over the past few weeks. So this will eventually zero out just as a supply-demand sort of thing. And they'll just keep printing so long as there's yield to generate, right? So that's going to continue kind of indefinitely. This DAI stuff has flatlined, but it's still decent, right? When you compare some of these APYs and make it sound like they're zero. They're not. They're pretty significant for non-volatile lending rates, right? Like crypto's a giant dumpster fire right now from a long perspective. If you're long, you're getting chopped up. If you're short, you're getting chopped up, right? So it's easier for many people to generate yield through stuff like Yearn, through stuff like Compound Aave, right? On Enzyme, we're lending a significant amount of capital through Yearn, Compound Aave, because directionality isn't extremely clear right now, and I don't have a good way to go short on stuff. So when you're unsure, you're going to see USDC rates probably decline, borrow rates, because more people are depositing, right? The same thing with Yearn TVL. If we look at Yearn TVL, in general, if Yearn TVL is increasing, I'm kind of bearish on price action, because to me this says people are incentivized to basically generate yield in ways they cannot do so otherwise. So we can say that there's maybe some incentives here for Yearn TVL spikes. You know, Yearn exploded in TVL post May 18th, whereas everything else either didn't recover or didn't recover as strongly as Yearn did. That TVL has waned slightly from those highs, but overall, Yearn TVL is incredibly high. Same thing with Curve, right? Curve and Yearn to me are kind of the same boat, where a lot of that is either stable assets or non-volatile asset. So to see Curve TVL increasing to near all-time highs relative to everything else, that's a bit problematic. If we look at Yearn TVL compared to everybody else, it's still kind of middle of the list. If we look at ETH, it's slightly higher on that list, but still it's got 4 billion, 3.5 billion in TVL. It's nothing to sneeze at. And this TVL kind of plugs into everybody else. This is the Yearn vaults on the website. My guess is that most people don't go here directly for deposits. They're looking on some alternative site that's showing them, you know, lending and borrowing rates like this, DeBank, Enzyme, some API, right? I think that's for all swap platforms. Most people probably don't go directly to Yearn for this stuff, but maybe I'm wrong. But you can see APYs for everything. You can see what you're holding. You can see where the extra incentives are for things like Curve, that sort of stuff. Total Wi-Fi users per day continues to kind of decline to nothing. That's a bit problematic if you're bullish, obviously, and is definitely a bearish divergence on price. Transaction counts for the token continue to decline to all-time lows, certainly not bullish on price, and average transaction values declining basically to all-time lows. So I'm extremely bearish. Most governance tokens, especially Wi-Fi, I don't see a purpose for it. I understand the need for governance and I understand what the governance does, but I think it's just incredibly mispriced for what it currently is at. NVT is currently increasing. So that says on-chain metrics relative to market cap. You know, you're not going to move Wi-Fi around a lot. It's probably just mostly a spec token anyway, unless there's some important governance issue. So NVT is always going to look probably pretty bad. You're not going to see a lot of active addresses either. But to see these declining since September, along with transactions, certainly not something that's bullish. If we look at Google Trends for yield farming, which is kind of what Yearn is all about, it's still rather quite high relative to where it was. You know, this is all like crop yield farming probably when before DeFi existed. So you can see Google Trends spiking in 2020 and then spiking again in 2021. They certainly haven't retraced completely. And we're kind of seeing this in the Yearn TVL, in the Curve TVL, Aave Maker, right? All those TVLs are extremely high still. So it's not like people have soured on the idea of lending and borrowing. You know, again, I love the service. I use it all the time for Enzyme stuff. It's just the token. Doesn't make sense to me that it's priced at 30,000. This is 5,200 monthly pivots, VPVR, volume, and RSI on Binance. And the next support down is at 23, based on monthly pivots, based on VPVR. Price is below the 200 with a death cross, so down should be the expectation. And below 23, there's support at 11 and 13. Previously, when it got to those levels, it basically had a parabolic cascading downside until there was some price manipulation to save it, basically, from a bunch of people who were upset. So we'll see if that happens again when it gets to 10 to 13. But I don't think we've seen fair price for Wi-Fi just yet, especially because this was released kind of in the mania of everything. So people kind of turn a blind eye to a lot of stuff. Certainly since late 2020 and throughout early 2021, anything that's only been through one cycle, to me, does not have a fair price yet, right? Until it's through a full bull market and a full bear market, I'm just not convinced that most of the stuff can hold at these levels. But hey, I could be wrong. On the cloud, it is far below the cloud, so in a vacuum, you'd call this a TK disequilibrium, TKC clamp, suggestive of oversold conditions, and your alarms and alerts should be going off in your head saying, okay, it's time to stop selling this and looking at a mean reversion attempt, just like all of crypto. These mean reversion attempts haven't quite worked out just yet, but you can cheat this a little bit by looking at the 12-hour. If price is in the cloud with a bullish TK cross, then you have a valid entry for this edge-to-edge trade, potentially to 59K. If this fails, you have to just wait it out and eventually get something on the 8-hour. Again, if you want to cheat this a little bit, I'd either be looking for this edge-to-edge entry on the 12-hour or a vanilla Kumo breakout on the 8-hour, which would be 35K. Ironically, that's basically the BTC 8-hour as well was a breakout above 35K, which has not happened yet. On Wi-Fi BTC, just tons of ranging, decent volume support here, below the 200, below the cloud. It's just an avoid for me. There's not a ton of bullishness here. You could say there's a TK disequilibrium on this as well. I think logically, people are going to have a hard time saying Wi-Fi is worth more than BTC. I just think that's a bit strange. My guess is they'll eventually redenominate this or redenominate this, issue 1,000x more of these or something, right, to change the price. I don't know. That's a governance issue, but it's weird that it's priced the same as BTC, even though there are obviously many less tokens than BTC. You know, I get it, but the lizard brain in a lot of people, including myself, is just like, no, that's not real. That's obviously fake and scammy, and you know, doesn't make any sense. Wi-Fi ETH has never had any bullishness on trend in a big way since listing. So that's important to keep in mind. This is just a perpetual descending triangle, perpetual bearish inevitability until this is above the 200-day moving average, until it's above the daily cloud. It's just a giant avoid on the long side of things. So overall, love Yearn as a service. The coin makes no sense. Probably needs to change dramatically in some way. Either they issue more, they change the price, something has to be done, I think, in order for this thing to survive long term. I'm probably most bearish of all the governance tokens on this one. TVLs are good. Service is great. I use this stuff for Enzyme. This is the DeFi portfolio I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, and the ETH-BTC fund I trade as well. You can send Ether USDC or just watch what I'm doing. AUM allocation performance. It's basically copy trading. This one, the goal was to get involved with a bunch of DeFi blue chips, and since April it's just been a bloodbath, right? Sometimes that's part of the game. We're currently 75-25 in USDC versus deploying that capital into DeFi. But if you look at what I'm involved with, a lot of this stuff is sitting in Yearn vaults, which were enabled by Enzyme last week. And you can see all the trades I make, me getting in and out of Yearn. You can see me on the other fund getting in and out of Yearn as well. So definitely use it. I think it's great. Like I said, just the token is a bit problematic for me. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe. Happy trading.